Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. For the first time in nearly 550 broadcasts of Technovation, we'll be speaking with an incumbent Chief Information Officer and his hand-selected successor. The gentlemen I'm referring to are Lee Crump, who is currently the CIO of Rollins, and his successor, Thomas Tesh, who will take on the new role in the near term. Rollins is the world's largest pest control company with over $2.2 billion in annual revenue. In this interview, we discuss Thomas and Lee's working relationship over the past 23 years, why Lee picked Thomas to replace him, and what Thomas believes are Lee's greatest strengths as a leader. We discuss Rollins M&A strategy and the only two things Rollins always takes over when buying a company, security and payroll. Lastly, we discuss Rollins' strategic priorities over the next few years, why Thomas believes we will see all computers go away in the future, and a variety of other topics. If you enjoy Technovation, please consider reading my book, Getting to Nimble: How to Transform Your Company into a Digital Leader. The book's now available on Amazon. As a special offer to our CXO listeners, if you purchase 50 or more books for your team, I'd be happy to join you and your team for a group discussion about it. To learn more, write us at info@metastrategy.com or visit gettingtonimble.com. Well, Lee Crump and Thomas Tesh, welcome to Technovation. Great to speak with you both.
Good to be here, Peter.
Yes, well, this is a rare treat for me. I rarely get a chance to speak with an incumbent chief information officer who's on the cusp of retiring and that person's hand-selected successor, and very much looking forward to gaining from your wisdom as to that process. But I'll begin with you, Lee, if I may. Lee, you have been at Rollins for nearly a dozen years, and I wonder if you could take a moment for those who may be less familiar with it, perhaps just give a brief thumbnail sketch of of Rollins' business, please.
Yeah, I'll be retiring April 2nd, just 2 months shy of my 12th anniversary there. It has been an awful lot of fun. The business has seen a tremendous amount of growth in that 12 years. Rollins is actually a holding company of a family of pest control brands, and we are worldwide. We will do over $2 billion. In fact, we did over $2 billion in revenue last year. We'll probably do at least 2.2 this year. Our largest and best known brand is Orkin. Everyone has heard of the Orkin man. Here in the Atlanta area, we also, Northwest, the mouse that everyone sees on the billboards as they drive around town is also part of our family of brands. So again, we have over 500 locations, branch locations across the country. And, you know, the unique issues we face in IT is that every morning, all of our employees, except the branch administrator, come into the branch or not, but then spend the rest of the day in their vehicle by themselves taking care of customers. So what's been important to us from an IT standpoint, even long before anybody thought about a pandemic, was what do we do to make sure we keep those technicians connected to and in real time with the customer and the branch, and then keeping the branch connected to us here in the support center in Atlanta.
That's fantastic. And talk about, you alluded to it a bit already, Lee, but I'd love to have you as the head of IT, the de facto chief information officer of Rollins.
Not for much longer.
Exactly. Talk a bit about your purview, if you would, for what time you have left.
We are responsible for all of information technology at Rollins, including all of our brands. We do have IT personnel at the largest brands, but the bulk of our team is managed from here in the Atlanta support center. We also have responsibility for the program management office. And probably, I think we've got, Thomas, about 175 FTEs if we count our employees and contractors.
That's correct.
Excellent. And a good friend of mine, Filippo Passerini, who used to be the chief information officer of P&G, used to say that every time you go to an executive recruiter and bring in an executive from outside the organization, it's a declaration of failure of succession planning. And clearly, this is a success story of succession planning, Lee and Thomas. And I'll stay with you for just a moment longer, if I may, Lee. I'd love to understand kind of the the way in which you thought about this once it occurred to you that the timing was right for retirement. What was that succession plan like? How was it communicated? Would love to understand a little bit further about why Thomas in your own words, and then I'll turn it over
Sure.
to Thomas to answer some of the same from his perspective.
Well, let me start by saying something that I just hold as probably the top priority for any, especially for any executive, but starting as a manager for 20, 30 years, long before I even thought about retirement, I always thought it was important that once you get into management, it's not any longer about what you do, it's about what your people do. And so I've always espoused hiring very, very strong people. And I've also always believed very strongly that you can't be promoted if you don't have someone ready to take your place. And then at some point in that process, I realized that the better the people were that I hired, and the more that I simply kept roadblocks out of their way and let them do their thing, the easier my job kept getting. So I tell people that really laziness is what drove this whole process. But I've always been a fanatic about hiring really, really good people, and gradually giving them, as quickly as they can earn it, giving them more responsibility and helping them grow. And you know what? Every once in a while along the way, people have left because there's a great opportunity somewhere, and we just didn't have that move ready at that time for them. And I'm just as proud of those folks as I am anybody that I've helped be successful. Period. I just think that's incredible, and I think that's our biggest role, our most important role. And the higher you go in the organization, the more important that becomes. The sliver of your job is vision and strategy, and the whole rest of it is hiring good people, motivating them, coaching them, and mentoring them. So in Thomas's case, I originally brought Thomas on board as a contractor back in 1998. So 23 years ago. I was at Rollins' largest competitor at the time. I was the CIO there. We were getting ready to roll out a new system, and we were going to send trainers out to all of the branches to train them on the new system. So that's where I first met Thomas, and he worked incredibly hard, a lot of hours, and I think we probably had only been there maybe 6 or 9 months, and I hired him. I put him in charge of the trainers, and by the time I left them in 2007, he was a director. And so when I got to Rollins in 2009, and we began developing our new CRM system for our locations, I kept talking to him and teasing him about, well, you need to come to work for me. And finally, one day, I'll never forget what had happened. I'd been on a branch tour, and I knew I needed his expertise and help in a specific area. So as I left the branch in my rental car to head for the airport, I called him and said, all right, I'm done joking around. You need to come to work for me, and you need to do it soon. So he joined us in 2012. And the interesting thing is, when he came on board, he had a specific area of responsibility, but each year that went by, and I think it was more to keep him from getting bored than anything else, it seemed like every year I had about 8 direct reports at the time. I'd transfer 1 or 2 of those folks to reporting to him until about a year ago. And again, I knew I turned 70 in November, so I knew the time was coming to turn this all over to the young folks. I only had 2 people reporting to me, Thomas and our vice president of infrastructure, and he also works as our CISO. So it's just a matter of just gradually through this process, giving him more and more responsibility, and he never failed. I never had to take anything back. So I was able to tell my boss last June. I announced internally that April 2nd would be my last day. And I said, I'm giving you 9 months notice in case you want to go outside. but I don't think you need to. And he agreed because he'd gotten to know Thomas very well over Thomas's tenure, thought very highly of him. So it almost is like I gave too much notice because in October we made Thomas the CIO, and I've really been just kind of working in a coaching and transitioning mode since then.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for that
Yeah.
overview, Lee. Thomas, not unlike LeBron James, your professional greatness began in your teenage years. That's very impressive. Thomas, I'd love to hear, from your perspective, how this opportunity was presented to you when it became apparent that you would be the successor. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, especially with a bit of runway, as Lee just described, the sorts of things that you did in order to get yourself ready for the new role.
Yeah, I mean, as Lee said, for me, it was, I don't know that this was the job. When I first started in IT, I thought this was the job I always wanted. And, as you go longer in IT, you realize, okay, this is good. And, Lee kept doing that. But, you realize Lee does a great job at, when I came here in 2012, like he said, starting with one thing and then, kind of adding things as we go to keep me, because I can't get bored easily. So he knows that about me. Understanding the talent is, I think, probably one of Lee's greatest skills. Also understanding the areas in which that talent may be better at some skill than him, which is a sign of wisdom, right? I mean, when you really boil it down, right? It's something that I've got to watch, and probably got the most respect for Lee is, I'm a very relationship oriented person. So I like to make relationships. I like to have those relationships. Lee is a more technical minded. He doesn't always, outside of work, yes, he loves relationships. Inside of work, he's very focused. So he saw that quickly and put me in some areas where, maybe he would not have excelled in the same way. And I will tell you, I think there's a level of maturity around that, right? And I think that's where, to find good people and keep them, to have the maturity. And then I think the other thing for this part is really the wisdom, right? One of the things, Lee said, and he's so true, Lee never tells me what to do. It's more of a situation of, here are some guardrails. Let's don't go outside those, and so kind of keeps you on this track. Because,
by the way, he frequently does, and I have to judge him.
Yeah. So
I think what I call guardrails, he thinks of as guidelines.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a great way to say it. So, but I will tell you, having that there gives you the ability to be a little freer, right? I can maneuver differently because I kind of know where my boundaries are. And to Lee's point, my goal is to always put my foot over, not my whole body, but my foot. So I would say, the wisdom part of that, and then also the directness, right? Lee is very direct. When he's mad, he's mad. When he's not, he's not. So you can simply see that. So you know where you stand, right? You're not having to guess. And then the other thing is really trying to get you involved in, looking around the good news, looking around the corner, figuring out what's going on. I would say that's wisdom that age gives you. I mean, it literally just happened the other day. Lee said something months ago, and our teammates remembered it and went and checked, and thankfully they did, because we would have had a problem if they wouldn't have. So, it's always never being satisfied. I think is, one of the things, I can give a lot of words about Lee. We've worked together a long time, but the fact that there's always, you can be a little better. So, it's finding that drive. Then the other thing is just hiring people that are better than you. I would say that's the greatest skill. It's easy to find successor when you're hiring people better than you. And I think that's where people mess up, is they don't really want to hire people better because of, once again, probably an immaturity thing, maybe not the wisdom yet to know why that's good for you. But I will tell you that those are the things that I would say. And Rollins has been a great thing. And to Lee's point, it really kind of happened naturally as direct reports went down. He had, I think, 9 when I started, then down to 2. And then, of course, now in my group, I have 8 now. So I've divided mine out. So, because you take all the things you learn. And for me, I'm a learner in terms of when I see something work, I want to try it too. because why wouldn't I? So you'll see a lot of similarity around how the next years go for me. I have a lot longer runway than Lee did, but the fact that he did, and also he was always very honest that this was a possibility. So it always kept me on the hook to want to try this out. And
Yeah.
I think at the point I was like indifferent either way was the point I got it. So there you go.
Very interesting. And I'm curious also, Thomas, as somebody who's been with the organization for most of the past decade yourself, and so you know the IT organization and the company more generally speaking a lot better than somebody who would have come in from the outside. To what extent do you see your planning going forward as one of continuity, as opposed to, for instance, leveraging a mandate that a change in leadership might offer to make some changes or tinker with some things? How do you think about that balance?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is, I think like everybody, the longer you're in a role, some things you had to do early on, you don't have to. And, I was literally just yesterday saying to our team, one of the things we used to do in IT is we used to go off and do an offsite and plan out our next 3, 5, 7 years. As time has gone, we've kind of gotten to a different way. We're going to probably reopen up some things we used to do and do them again because they make a lot of sense as time goes. And then it's also a fresher look at it. So it's not a matter of difference. So I don't expect a lot different because what we're doing had a long-term strategy behind it already. So more of my job is not to screw up the strategy as much as, and add on to it, not actually, rip the whole place up. Because I think a lot of people come in and decide they want to do that, to prove a point. And what happens is you lose the continuity of what you had going, right? And that's what we have to, my thing is, we need to apply some band-aids around places, make things better, get people on the same page, and bring the teams together. And I think, you'll see a lot of hashing of things we used to do when I first got here that will come back around again. And we're going to do a lot more of that. And some people that have been here will be like, oh, we've done this before. Some people will think this is brand new. So, yeah.
Makes sense. Lee, I'd love to bring you back into the conversation. Talk a bit about the strategy that the organization has been operating under in recent times and some of the substance of that. Well, the plan that you're leaving behind you, so to say.
Well, the business strategy, and it's the IT strategy is worthless if it doesn't tuck into and match the business strategy. But the business strategy is growth through acquisition with a goal. We are, we're not a technology company. We're doing pest control. So our goal is always high single-digit revenue growth and low double-digit profit growth. Organic growth, but accounting for half of that, and then another half through acquisitions. And our strategy around acquisitions is always we don't buy turnarounds. We buy successful businesses, and we want to buy a business. We want to leave it continue to operate under its brand and with its leadership and its people, its vehicles, its uniforms, the whole shooting match. And where we provide the synergy is that things, for example, like cellular devices and the rates we pay, because we've got 14,000 cell plans with the major carriers, we can always lower telephone rates. We can lower network costs. We can lower vehicle costs and chemical costs. But we want the business to continue to run as it was. We simply are taking costs out, and we don't do that by going in and firing a bunch of people. In fact, in most cases, we keep the existing executive team in place and the owner if they want to continue working, although a lot of them decide the whole reason they're selling is because they're ready to cash out and retire. We continually are looking at ways to build our customer share. We are the largest pest control company in the world. We want to make sure we're the best. And certainly the bigger you get, single digit of revenue growth requires us to grow each more each year, more than the 10th largest pest control company in the United States. So it's interesting, right? You never stop. But we focused our technology around customer retention, gaining customers, making our technicians as efficient and effective as possible. Because again, we're doing services in the customer's home or in the customer's place of business. It's important that we be able to accurately say when we are going to be there to do the service. Things like routing and scheduling. One of our major initiatives we've been working on now for 3 years is around routing and scheduling. And again, with 6,000 or 7,000 technicians now running under our routing system, over the last 3 years, we've reduced our miles per stop by about 1.27 miles per stop. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but we make 900,000 stops a month. So you start doing the math at 900,000 times 1.2 miles, and you're talking 950,000 miles, and our variable vehicle cost is 22 cents a mile. Our average drive speed is 29.85 miles per hour. So we've also saved tens of thousands of technician hours drive time. And that's the way Rollins runs its business. We are metrics driven, key operating indicators. We are on a daily basis looking at all these numbers, and we want to provide excellent customer service. But it's so important that we do it effectively and efficiently. And that's where IT is really making a huge difference for the business.
Very interesting. Thomas, given the imperative to grow through acquisition, I'm curious, to what extent is there kind of a blueprint for each of the acquisitions? No doubt, of course, each one's a little bit different, but how much of it is templatized, for a lack of a better way of framing it, as to the steps IT must undertake after each of the acquisitions?
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much know, and there's a good sense. I mean, that's an area that I was managing before. So, so that's kind of the pace with most of this stuff. Some of this was a piece of mine already. So, it's not unfamiliar to me. So I have a much smaller learning curve when it comes to actually picking it up. So, we kind of know what to do around those kind of situations. So it's been quite easy for there. And then every acquisition has its own special flavor, as you will, because at the end of the day, right, we're buying a company that has customers, but we're really buying their people, right? So there's always, when people are involved, it's always a little more difficult than just computers, right? So there's always special things that they've decided. And the other thing is, based on the company's size, they could have a myriad of technology that's different than what we have. So, it's really understanding that and figuring out what to do in those situations, which we have a group that deals with that. We know kind of what to do, and we're looped into it. So it's really not a shocker for us when it comes to that stuff.
There's a checklist we go through, and obviously, security is one of the first things. There's certain things we don't want to be the old, we're from corporate, we're here to help you, right? So there really is a sensitivity to the fact that, yes, they've been bought, and yes, we own them, but we bought them because they're successful and we want them to stay successful. So we don't dictate an awful lot of things, but two of the things that happen right away is cybersecurity, and our team make sure we do scans. We evaluate what tools they have, what processes they have. We'll implement our password, protocols for password protection, those types of things. So that's number one. And payroll we'll take over payroll. Those are probably the only two things that are absolutely mandatory. And then really what we do, it's up to the brand. We've actually had some brands come to us and say, hey, would you take over our IT? We don't know what the hell we're doing, and we trust you. And we've done that, and it's worked in many cases. God, I wish I'd done that sooner. Mm-hmm. So we leave, again, their IT people there in their location, but they report to us. They've just got a dotted line. And then we have some people who are very protective for a while, very protective, and they want to maintain their own folks. And again, we say, hey, as long as you're doing a good job and following the basic rules and protocols here, we're fine to let you alone. So
that's interesting. So kind of a hybrid then, Lee, between a centralized and a federated model. In some cases, it sounds like there's a lot that's fairly centralized, and in some cases they become centralized earlier at their request, while
I think
others
it's more
are
of
left
a
in more of
Confederate States of America than a United States of America. Fair description. Very much states' rights, and again, we provide guidelines. So.
Got it. Very, very good. Thomas, I wanted to give you the last word. As you think to the future, what are some of the trends that particularly excite you?
For me, I would say probably, yeah, that's a really tough question actually for me, because pretty much everything in IT kind of I enjoy. So I would say I stick with mobile, mainly because, for a while, right, the world shifted to being more online than they've ever been, right? When it comes to mobile devices, I'm always going to enjoy them. It's an area that I spent a lot of my career in, mainly because we're just tipping the iceberg. I truly believe computers will go away, and we will get more into a mobile environment. So I find that super interesting. I always have. I find it interesting to see what can be done on there. And then, obviously anything around that piece or virtual reality and those kind of things you can do for training. We've played a lot with virtual reality, me and Lee have, around training, and actually how do you train our people using it? What do you do in their field? Those are two areas that always interest me. You can always get me every time.
That's fantastic. Well, Lee Crump, first of all, congratulations on a successful tenure as CIO of Rollins. You're somebody I originally got to know because of your enormous reputation in the Atlanta CIO community, and it's through a number of groups there that I got to know you by reputation, and then was so pleased to get to know you more literally soon thereafter. Congratulations on your many successes, and Thomas, best of luck to you. Congratulations on again your ascent to the CIO post. I hope it is a successful and fulfilling experience for you. Thank you to both of you gentlemen for a great conversation.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Peter.